What do ancient African circular huts and modern digital experience have in common? Today, we're exploring how good UX design isn't something invented in the digital age, but has existed for centuries, and why these timeless principles still shape the most effective websites and apps you use today. Hi, my name is Niels, co-founder of Dinghy Studio. As both a seasoned web developer and UI designer, I bridge the critical gap between design and development while leading our fully remote digital strategy team, helping organizations create sustainable solutions that transform user experience into business success, especially as AI reshapes how we interact with technology. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show my colleague, Nosipo Nwigbo. She is a UX research specialist at Dinghy Studio with a natural gift for asking the right questions. With a social science background from the University of Cape Town, she combines her training in sociology and history with 3 years of specialized UX research experience. Hailing from Johannesburg, South Africa, Nosipo brings a unique perspective to creating inclusive, human-centered experiences. She's dedicated to understanding the core issues within products and bridging the gap between users and technology. And with that, let's get right into it. Hey Nosy, welcome back to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're getting into UX research this month. I think it's our focus topic for the newsletter as well. And I wanted to interview you on all of the topics that we're laying out there because I really loved the analogy that you picked up for the intro. For everyone listening in today, we're talking about UX research. You know that we love the topic, and we have 3 segments that we want to get through in the course of the podcast today, and that is UX Research Demystified. I love that you're on for that topic, Nosy, because it's a methodology that we use daily anyway, and I think as an agency we kind of stumble upon these things so often. So I'm really curious to hear your takes on the myths that we're trying to bust here, right? Second segment, research methods overview. Generally, I think we'll try to make this more approachable because at least I feel that when I speak with our customers, that UX research is still this thing that seems to be like this black box of magic where people, I don't know, you talk about it and they're all like, yes, it sounds very useful, but we don't understand what's happening. Kinda. And I think we feel it doesn't have to be that way because it's actually, well, not black magic, but super straightforward stuff that even happens in everyday lives sometimes. Let's see how we get into it. And then just to address a hot discussion at the moment or in the last couple of weeks. And that is, of course, the influence of our overarching digital friend, the artificial intelligence, and how it comes together with the whole realm of UX research, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. So you started this month's story about all of this, with the case study of, I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but the case study of the Roundavel. Can you take us through it and maybe share what inspired you to get into it with this example?
Yeah. So for the listeners who don't know, I am currently based in Johannesburg, which is in South Africa. And when I was looking at this newsletter, the first thing that came to mind was, how does UX manifest itself in my daily life? What around me has principles of UX? And how does this intersect with our daily lived experiences and our daily lived products and tools? And the first thing that came to mind was that user experience is formulated on human experience. And with that thought, I thought about what informs my own human experience. And immediately the Roundavel came to mind. A Roundavel, for those who don't know, is a house that is often found in rural villages along South Africa, Southern Africa, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, of which is where my maternal family is from. So in our village, we have a lot of these structures, which is our homes. They in one plot, we'd have maybe one or two. So one is where we have our vegetables, our gatherings, our kitchen, any sort of celebration is held in that roundavel. And then the other is where we probably live, we stay, we sleep. So there's different roundavels for different things. There's different roundavels for different families. So when you have a family unit, your extended family will live in the same plot, but everyone will have their own roundavel. So yeah. So just to give a visual clue to what it looks like, it's a circular building, and then it has like a pointed, often thatched roof. But as we have more access to more technological advances, these buildings are built with bricks and roof tiles, etc. But in the past, they used to be built with stone and mud and just using the natural resources we had around us.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
But so it's round. Like it's
round. It's circular.
It's a round thing.
Yeah.
And does it have rooms inside of it?
No.
Or no?
No, it's
no
just
walls.
one room. No walls, just one room. And with that in mind, it being circular with no additional rooms, I started to think about how is the structure built for the human existence? How is the structure built for the community? How is the structure built with user experience in mind?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I discuss in the newsletter is that it caters for Zulu culture. So in our culture, when you enter a room, you have to acknowledge everyone that's in this room. And it's considered really rude for you not to acknowledge people when you enter a room. And with it being circular, you're allowed to see everyone who's in the space. Whereas if it was, for example, a rectangular or a square home where there's different divisions and different rooms, you won't really be able to acknowledge everyone in the space. So that's how the structure is built for user experience, and that the user need is to be able to acknowledge everyone in the space, and the product that comes out of it, circular room, allows you to see and acknowledge everyone in the space.
Yeah.
Another example that I speak of in the newsletter is that it's quite rude to face your back to someone. And when you're in a round space, you're less likely to show your back to anyone in the room. So everyone sort of sits on the periphery of the shape. So you're able to see everyone else in the room whilst your back being to the back of the wall. These are cultures and norms and needs that the product allow for. And basically with this piece, I just wanted to highlight how user experience not only tackles digital products, but it comes from our daily lived experience. And user experience is a means of articulating what the human experience is. And I think this is just a very personal and very fun segment to open this newsletter with.
I really loved it. Like when I read through the first draft and I was like, what's a roundavel? Like, what are we getting into? And then I read through it, and the whole thing of that it just, of course, you can't turn your back in a roundavel to someone, but just because it's circular, right? Like it encourages this group dynamic of sitting around in a circle or like standing face to each other. Like also, I don't know, like so many games that we also played at our son's birthday party. Like everything is always in a circle. So everyone in a group of 15 or whatever can look at each other. And,
exactly.
And I really loved that. And it reminded me that, and that's also something that we touched upon in the course of this podcast more than once, I think, is that this term of user experience is always a little bit, I don't know if it's clunky or whatever, but like, so I think the way that it came to be or how it's understood from what, like, I'm not even sure, and we have a UX design agency, right? But so what I understand from where it comes from is that it's supposed to describe the experience with the digital part of a product, right? So if we talk about the entire customer experience of like a customer of any consumer product, let's just imagine, I don't know, whatever, like a drink or something. And then the customer buys this drink and they have an experience. And then the customer experience is kind of the overarching thing. And whenever it's about something digital, then we start to talk about the user experience. And that's fine and all. I just kind of think the take that we always have at Dinghy is user experience is not UI design. And it's kind of not only the experience you have with the digital product. And it actually doesn't really matter if the website is technically slow or the copy text is bad. Like the user, like your customer, they don't care. Like for them, it's just a bad experience, like mashed together. That's all that it is. And I think this is why, coming from this stance, I really love this example, taking something that's, first of all, was developed over centuries and is not digital at all, and is cultural specific, and it's just a solution to a problem, the way you explained it. And so I love that, especially as an intro to our first segment that we're going to talk about today. And that is common myths around user experience research. I think there's so much, there's so much to discuss here. Let's just get right into it. Like, as I said in the intro, we have this so often. Like when I talk to customers, they're usually amazed of when I just tell them what we're going to do. They're like, oh, this is not as complicated as I thought. And I'm like, no. In most cases, we literally ask for people's opinions.
Exactly.
So the first one you had was UX research is only for experts with big budgets. Woof.
Yeah, so the assumption is that you need a really big budget because it's always a very long, drawn out exercise, and it's usually conducted by super formal scientists who are very accurate and very scientific and very, very grandiose with their research. But here at Dinghy, we are very scientific and very precise and very rigorous. But we do it on the client's budget, and we pride ourselves with it being rapid. So the research that we do utilizes simple methods that produce meaningful research.
Well, I can certainly relate to that. Like, I mean, I sort of learned how to work alongside of UXR methods from you. Like you turned this company around to be research focused anyway. And so I had my fair share of learning here. And I think with this, I was probably even one to think that myth number one would be true. Like I kind of thought user research. Yeah, that's probably super useful. But when are we going to do it? Like who's going to pay for this? And my big learning from this is that this is actually like the way I feel about it now, and that we have proven over and over in the projects that we did since you joined, is that it's actually not something that comes on additionally in the definition or like looking at the budget or like the time that you need for a project. I would say it's an additional activity, sure, but it actually results into projects being quicker and being less expensive. And I think that's the counterintuitive part here, because it's another thing you do, but it saves you over time. And that is just something where I think we did that with small clients. We did that with big clients, like with websites, with apps, with whatever, really. And so when I conducted my first interviews, I just thought it's amazing that I never go out of an interview without having learned something that I didn't know before. Like I was, especially in the beginning, I was so sure I'm a seasoned UX designer, but of course the button goes there and has this label, but it was just never the case,
Exactly. And, just to go further into that point, I think the assumption is that when we are doing this research, when it comes to big budgets, we're thinking of getting participants, that it's really difficult to get participants. But even if you're a small team, speaking to one customer is better than speaking to no one at all. And as long as you can speak to your target audience, as long as you can closen that relationship between yourself and your customer, that's a great starting point. So try and speak to your customer just to ask them questions that you have about your product. And that in and of itself is UX research. So
nice. Yeah. Awesome. So myth number 2, UX research is just asking users what they want. So I definitely can see that one. Like I think I can't count the times that I had to debunk that myth in a project planning call when people said, well, then they're going to tell you their opinion. And then what? We just do it or what? And I'm like, well, no, of course. But so yeah, like what's your take on that one?
Yeah. So the idea is we use both attitudinal and behavioral methods to really dig deeper into what is it that is needed by the customer. What is it that the customer is battling with? What comes easy to the customer? What does the customer say that they want, but they behave differently too? There's so many times, Niels, that we've been in sessions where the customer had said that I don't like this, but they're able to use it very easily. Or they say, this is really nice, but you see them use it in the completely different way to what it's supposed to look like. I think this is where choosing the correct method comes in. Using methods that assess both the attitudes and the behaviors of your users and not taking things at face value, of really being rigorous when it comes to the methods that you use and the way in which you observe and interact with your customers when they are in these test environments.
Interesting. So one thing that I have experience with is to conduct a usability interview, for example, like a usability test where we would have like a design or like anything, like something they can have on their screen. And we would go on a Teams call or like a Google Meet or whatever, anything where they can share their screen. So they open it, share their screen, and we watch. Right. And in this situation, I can absolutely see what you mean. Like they talk, they kind of brain dump onto you whatever they think they're kind of looking at or what they're thinking and so on. And while they're talking, you still see them interacting with the thing, right? And yeah, I absolutely recall many situations where they were like saying this and that, and we're kind of happily going through the whole thing.
Exactly.
Like we're going to talk about research methods in the second segment a little later. Outside of usability testing, is this like, do you have another example of where this, like, it feels almost like a little split between, what they say and what they do?
Yeah. So, even in, for example, user interviews, right? When the user interview begins and the user might be a bit nervous and a bit scared to tell what's on their mind or say what's on their mind, they might say something that they think you want to hear. But as that rapport is being built with the user and they're starting to become more comfortable, and you circle back to these questions and you ask it in a different way, that's when you really get to the main gist and the core problem that they might have. So, that's definitely an example of really understanding what your client is saying, being empathetic to your users. Yeah, just really being obsessed with the client and the participants and trying to understand and decipher them and what they might mean and what are they saying, and circling back and asking follow-up questions.
Interesting. Do you have something like you don't take like the first 5 minutes for real anyway? Or is this, do you have like kind of preset habits?
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is that I usually start off with like off the record warm-up questions, just to get to know the participant that I'm talking about, talk about if they have a dog, if I see a cat on their screen, just to warm them up and make them feel comfortable. Also affirming that, look, there's nothing to be scared of. There's no right or wrong answer. you telling the truth is really, really helping me build a better product. So that
I had a
usually
couple of
does help.
situations where people were worried, even though like you primed the entire thing, like you're saying, would it be possible to get on a 20-minute call? And I'm really interested in your honest opinion. Like you say all of the things, right? And they still, after like the first couple of minutes, like you get the feeling they're holding back or they're right. And you kind of try to get behind that or try to motivate them to read. So, and at some point they kind of like as if they were trying to get behind the microphone or whatever, they're trying to say, well, but I don't want to talk bad about your product.
Yeah. I've had so many participants who are like, sorry, I'm so sorry, but this sucks. And I'm like, tell me it sucks. Why does it suck? Tell me. I want to hear it.
Yeah. Ah, interesting. Awesome. Let's get back to the myths, but like this is the point I want to kind of put a pin in, because I think it's a very interesting culturally. How okay is someone from a specific background with being honest about what they think, even when they're asked directly for exactly this?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Next one. UX research is time consuming and delays projects. Well, yeah, that's a popular one, I would say.
Yeah, it is a popular one. And I think, we've managed to combat that internally, of which I'm really excited about. So one story that I tell time and time again is that when I was quite early in my career, I had just joined Dinghy and I was still trying to find my footing, trying to figure out how does UX research work? How can I report back? How does the team take in information? What do they prefer? And I was so obsessed with delivering these really long-winded reports that are super academic, very rigorous, goes into every single aspect of research. And that in and of itself started to delay projects. And it is when we developed a rapid methodology or rapid approach to user experience research, that is really when we began to see the fruits of conducting this research. As a service at Dinghy, I think we've really perfected the art of producing research studies that are not time consuming and that don't delay the project by ensuring that, one, we have a project roadmap that includes research as soon as possible and it's included in the roadmap. So the researcher knows when are things due, when am I starting to look for participants, etc. So by including researchers in the project roadmap, that's how you're able to combat these delays. Two, as a UX researcher, understanding how does your team take in information, what's important to your team, what are things that can live just in the repository, and what are things that needs to be surfaced to your team. So I think this is something that is a case-by-case study, but I think it's something that we really pride ourselves on, of being really rapid when it comes to our user experience research and bringing in these findings as soon as possible.
So I remember, of course, first of all, I think I was very impressed by the first time you finished a report like that. I was like, wow, the level of detail about something. I think I didn't even think that it would be possible to describe something in such a comprehensive way. Especially because, I don't know, we started an agency after working in startups and bigger companies and whatever. And so I think an agency is a special case in itself because we always have projects running in parallel. Stuff is depending on the customer's timeline. And so kind of naturally, I always feel like running an agency, as much as you try to keep it calm, it sort of kind of turns into a hot potato tossing contest anyway. And and at the time I was really worried that we would freak you out with this entire situation. And I was really wondering how we could fit research into this. But so my question is, I think, to stack on top of myth number 3, would you say this myth might even exist rightfully so? Because
yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think for research to be rigorous, it takes time. And also based on the different methodologies that are taken or chosen, that too takes time. So it is rooted in something, but I do think there are ways to cut corners, you know, in order to deliver findings at the right time. Because it's better for you to bring findings that are fresh and needed for your team to move forward than bring it when it's too late or it's not useful to your team anymore.
So you mentioned that it was very helpful for you to see that research is already included on a project roadmap, so you know when it comes and when to prepare. We talked about this fact so many times outside of research at all. Like I spoke about this with stakeholders, product managers, legal people, copywriters, video editors, like everyone had the stance that they said, well, I love this wireframing phase so much, or this concept phase of the project that you're running, because I know what to prepare for. Like usually it's like 4 weeks to the launch. People call us up and say, now please shoot like 3 videos and edit them until, well, basically actually only in 2 weeks, because we have to take them online and also transcribe them and so on. And they're like, how on earth am I supposed to do quality work here? And so do you think that is something that is usually overlooked as well? Like that you just don't know when to come in and when to provide value with the research that you're supposed to do?
So even if we take it to most companies work on this agile, lean sort of work mode, right? And every morning you'd have your stand up, you'd have your scrum, and only user design is included in those meetings. They are checked up on, they are updated, they are allowed to bring in any stumbling blocks that they might have, anything that might delay the project. And user experience research is sort of not included in that. And that's an aspect that also is dependent on the project. That's something that can also delay the project. And just taking it down to the grassroots of including UX research into every single thing that's done, you know, it has to be included into the process of delivering a product. And when this aspect or this department is included, that is when they're able to work alongside the entire team and ensure that projects are timed in a way that does not delay the projects as a whole.
I agree. It's absolutely like whenever we took someone along, or like even if now it sounds maybe a little intimidating that everyone has to be on the daily call every day, like this is not necessarily what it's going to be, but I think the essential part is that whoever is supposed to deliver something to a project, they kind of got to know. Who doesn't like to know upfront that something's coming? You know?
Exactly.
So like for me, this is something that is just super natural to, if you're designing a website and it should have like photos, videos and copy text on it, and it should look nice and it should, well, be on the internet as a website and not as a static image, then you probably need a copywriter, a photographer, a videographer, like a front-end developer, and someone who sets up a web server. And all of them should kind of know that you're making a website. Otherwise, this will end in chaos.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because the biggest pushback that I hear is, well, what you're proposing sounds like chaos. And my biggest comeback to that is, honestly, not doing it to me sounds like chaos. Because with the waterfall method you're doing, everybody just, you know, will come in way too late. The ones that come in at the end of the project are usually the ones that are then maximum stressed because everything is delayed and took too long, and that they still want to, you know, be on time with the deadline. And so whoever comes in last gets the shortest time to do their thing. And this is chaos.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right. Cool. Next one. Super interesting with regards to the intro. UX research is only for digital products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we got into that in the intro, right? That was an excellent example of how UX research or UX in general is not only for digital products, but seeps into our everyday life. Another really cool example was that I was reading this case study of when self-checkouts, like at a grocery store, was brought into the market. Not everyone knew how to operate it. They did not know how to use it. And that's how it was assessed in the actual shop to see how does this digital market exist in the real world. Right. So actually interacting with people who are coming into the store, how do they navigate the store? What makes them decide to self-check out themselves or go to a cashier? Is there a time basis, like where we're going to put it in the store, how we're going to set it up, etc. So those are ways in which it's not only a digital product, but you're looking at the entire cohesiveness of the shop that is utilizing this digital product.
That's a great example, really, because it got me thinking that we do, as we said in the beginning, we think still in these boxes of customer experience, user experience, brand strategy, like all of this sort of stuff that, well, defines the overall experience or relationship of a customer to a company. And I mean, we just see every day, I would say, that digital products and they don't exist necessarily only in the digital realm anymore, right? Like I feel the lines are blurring so much between physical and digital stuff that I almost feel we should get rid of this whole UX term altogether. Let's just call it customer experience. Or if somebody's not buying from you, then it's, well, just the experience. And that's it. Like, because like it makes it sound so fancy, but it's not. And everybody, like, if you think for just a second about yourself, like the last time you used something, did you like it or not? Like, did your coffee machine this morning, did you kind of have a good experience with it? Or did it ask you for water and to clean the tray and to descale and to, that's all of the stuff that's on my coffee machine. And I'm having like a meow relationship with it today. So my user experience with my coffee machine is like, mwah, today. And so I think I would just love if, and this is why I love this section so much, if we could just, all chill out a little bit and just make it less complicated. Like it's not crazy. Like we're making something from humans for humans. We kind of want them to be successful using whatever we're making, either to get filthy rich or to literally solve a problem, or ideally both. But like, we just want to know if it works. That's it. It's we don't care if it's physical or if it's digital or whatever. We kind of just want to make sure, can they use it or not? Can they do the job? I think this is really why I wanted to turn this newsletter into a podcast, because I love this whole thing so much. Moving on to the last one. UX research is a one-time activity. That's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one.
Yeah.
So doing any research at all is great, right? But to really get the best out of anything is to do it continuously. So for you to run your research the same way that you do sprints. So after every feature, before every feature, once after post-launch. Is it after post-launch or is it just post-launch? Because after post-launch is post-launch, right?
I think it's just post-launch.
Okay. So, continuous research enhances the product's relevancy over time and ensures that your customers still relate to what you're putting out. Any new feature that you develop is able to be tested. Any new feature that you're thinking about can be evaluated with your customer. These are all the benefits of continuously doing research and embedding it into the practice of whatever product is being built or created.
I think this one really turned around for me when I stopped thinking of UX research as an additional service that we could offer optionally and just integrated the whole thing into the design process. Like I think when I put together an offer, there's no way to not do it. Like it's kind of, and I don't even make a big fuss about it either. Like whenever we design something, we just do research.
Yeah, it just is what it is, right?
It absolutely is. And, most of the times, I know I sound like a broken record on this one, but it's just so true. As a designer and a front-end developer, like as someone who literally has to put stuff together in the end, like to make the thing, I suffered so many times, especially in the design process, from when you just have a blank canvas and you're staring at it and you kind of know the project description, of course, like you have the plan, but you got to start somewhere. And to have been in user interviews before that, or a usability test or a discovery research session or anything where you would kind of have the opportunity to kind of get into the topic already a little bit more, to immerse yourself in the whole structure of what you're trying to express in buttons and text and images and a layout or whatever, is just so helpful, because the people told you before what they will be trying to do with whatever you're making. So it's so much easier to prioritize that, to just put it on the screen and be like, was this what they were thinking about? Kinda, I guess. It's, to just have this first draft to iterate on then is just super helpful.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's move over to segment number 2, to research methods. I think we touched upon a couple of them while discussing the myths already. Do you want to take us through the ones that you had listed here and maybe just add a little bit of to formulate a goal? What is out there even? First of all, I think that will help to demystify the whole thing on a top level. And then maybe we can even to get people doing it. I think I would love, dear listeners, for you to go out and just pick one and do it. That would be awesome.
So, just to give some context, when we as UX researchers are conducting any sort of research, the first thing that we do is we pick a methodology based off of what we're trying to achieve. So there are 2 main sections, which is quantitative versus qualitative. So quantitative deals with numbers. So that's when you want to get hard facts. You want to get numbers to back up any decision that you're making. Qualitative deals with the why and the reasoning behind anything that you're trying to find out. So when you want to know why is it that your customer is doing ABC, that is when you dive into qualitative. Some of these methods use both. Some of them only use one. Some of them just use the other. So that's what I'll be going into with these methods. I'll be describing what is it best used for, what sort of method is it, as well as an example of its application. So starting off with surveys. So surveys are a quantitative method. This is when you want to get the numbers behind an action. You want to get the numbers that will back up any decision that you're making. And it's best when you have a large group that you quickly want to get information out of. So an example of this application would be a checkout process. So when you want to get feedback on the usage of the feature and just get numbers and statistics behind this process. So we'd use a survey.
Is this the typical, how did you find this experience, from 0 to 10 or how?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you'd have, like you mentioned, the 0 to 10 ratings. You'd have yes or no. You'd have open-ended. You'd have closed-ended. But for you to be able to get as much feedback as quickly as possible, you'd have closed-ended questions with options that you provide for your user. So you're able to tally it in Excel or whatever other data processing platform that you use.
Gotcha. And so this is usually after the fact, they did something and then you come with a survey.
Can be both. Can be before. trying to understand your user's interests, trying to understand a situation, and it can be after they've used your product and you want to rate it or see how it works.
So survey is like, could just be your general type form, like, or
Exactly.
something, right? Or Google Forms. Like you just come up with a bunch of questions, send it out to a group, and then see just on a number basis how many people did this and that, answered this question this and that way.
Exactly. Next, we have interviews. So interviews are a qualitative method. This is best for understanding the why behind a behavior, understanding why your customer does a specific thing. So the value in this is that you're able to uncover pain points and get the emotional responses and nuances behind any insights that your customers might have.
So interview, I mean, that kind of implies that it's live, right? Like what we're doing. So it's a dialogue. Is there also like a way to do this asynchronously or something?
Yes, there are. So I've seen a lot of apps that are coming up where they would give you a question and you read it out and you give an answer. And I think that has its place, right? So it's fast, you're able to get an answer. But what I really enjoy about moderated interviews is that you're able to probe and have follow-up questions and pick up on specific things, or even the choice of skipping a question entirely when you see that it's not relevant. So there is a space for both moderated and unmoderated interviews.
Oh, unmoderated interviews. Nice. All right. Yeah. I was just thinking that it's almost a crossover between surveys and interviews. Like it's like a video interview or whatever, because like what I really like about video or even audio is since it's human to human, like you can kind of try to understand what's between the lines a little bit better than if it's a written answer, right?
Yeah, cool. Moving on to usability testing. So this is my favorite method. I really enjoy it. You're able to get both qualitative and quantitative by saying that you're able to get the why and the reasoning behind a decision, but you're also able to get the quantitative of 5 customers struggled with the specific feature that we're trying to work on. 2 customers thought that you need to click on this CTA instead of this CTA. So you're able to get the numbers behind any sort of reasoning that you have. And with a usability test, this is when we have a feature that we're trying to test and we have our users click through it and interact with the design and giving us their most honest opinion whilst we're able to observe what are they doing and what are they struggling with and what are they able to do correctly.
Yeah. I think biggest surprise in the last couple of years for me and with regard to usability testing is I thought this only works on the finished product. Like right? But it just doesn't. Like you can, like what we usability tested the crudest blueprint napkin drawings on, right? Like as long as you kind of, you describe the premise, like this is a website, you came here from an ad and like, we just want you to see if this sort of makes sense to you. And it was like a rough layout and text and that already started to work. And not only a little bit, like people, like I was really surprised by the level of engagement people had with a wireframe. Like it was just a black and white drawing and they were still like, you're saying this or that. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So I get it. Well, I'm going to scroll a little bit and I'm like, amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting how participants are able to interact with anything. It can be a drawing on a piece of paper and you can take that into usability testing and you will walk out with information that really helps to fuel the designs that you're creating.
Also gets you thinking sometimes,
It does. It does.
Like also in a way that if you have like a really good napkin drawing and they're like, this is super awesome. Let's, and you're like, but it's just a drawing. Should I just stop working or what? Like, okay, cool. All right.
So moving on to card sorting. So card sorting is a quantitative method. This is where you get the numbers behind categorization. So when I say categorization, card sorting is used for when you have a design or you have information architecture and you're trying to categorize it into a way that matches your user's mental model. So an example that I've used in the past is we were creating a mega menu and we didn't know how users categorize certain elements and where they saw it fitting into this mega menu. So by conducting this card sorting exercise, users were able to sort categories into these little menu options. And that helped ensure that whatever we're showing on our information architecture matches the user's mental model.
Amazing. Yeah. I was just trying to think of an example, but that's a super good one. And I can totally see that just being super effective. Like, what would you say? Because in the beginning you said quantitative methods need more participants. Like, how many participants would you try to get for the mega menu example?
That's a really good question. So I remember from that study, I think we looked at between 20 to 50 participants to be able to create this design with confidence and go ahead with it.
Because before that, it just might be a little random. Or like
Exactly.
You won't be able to see like clear clusters or trends or something like that.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the next one already, and I'm really excited to talk about that one.
Yeah. So this is ethnographic research. This is a qualitative method. So ethnographic research is when you immerse yourself in the user's natural environments. So an example of that could be job shadowing a participant for the day. So an example that we've had with one of our clients was that they are a POS provider. And one of the ethnographic research studies was that the product owner at the time job shadowed the sales reps to see how do they sell their POSs. So running into stores, listening to their script, seeing how do they find merchants to sell to, what do they say, what do they take out of their bag, how do they write down notes, how do they pitch, how do they follow up. Just the everyday life of a user uncovers insights that you can't find in controlled testing. When you're in the natural environments, that's when you're able to get all the nuances that you miss when things are controlled and neat and tidy. You're able to see the messiness of running from one business to the other.
Would you say it's helpful to the method if at some point, like, could you probe first? Like, could you kind of go in and say, like, excuse me, could I maybe ask like a little question or is this disturbing the whole premise?
Yeah, my understanding of this method is to stay as invisible as possible and not to interact with what is happening and to stay in the background and just fully observe what you're seeing. So to me, I would not get involved. Rather, I would ask questions afterwards. But when you're observing the actual interaction, just to take as much notes as possible and probe afterwards.
All right. Last one, right?
Yeah. Last one, heat maps. So this is how you're able to, heat maps are a quantitative method. You're able to visualize and see where your user clicks and scrolls and what do they hover on, what are their interests, what are they clicking on the most. So usually how this looks like is that you'll have a screen and you'll have different areas that highlight green, that highlight orange, and that highlight red, that indicate what went well, where is there any churn, where is there any drop-offs, where is there any problems that are on the website.
So as someone who's, built a bunch of websites and worked in specifically startups tend to have this sort of stuff. So twofold question, kind of. The heat maps thing, that is something that I saw being included as like an analytics platform on websites, right? Like where you have the script and then you can log in somewhere and just kind of see this heat map overlaid over to your website. That is what this means, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. And so the second part of the question is, what would you say, like, is Google Analytics, is that a research method also?
Yeah. I'd say it is.
Because like that's something that comes up often as a reason for us to conduct a UX audit. So people come and say, look, we have Google Analytics, we have heat maps, we have like all sorts of quantitative data, but we don't know what to make of it. Like we see that people, like the bounce rate is high. We see people churning. We can see all of that, but we don't know why.
Interesting. I love that you bring that up, because that's where we see the flaw of quantitative data, in that you're able to see where the problem lies, but you don't really know why. It's when you use qualitative methods to understand the nuances, to understand the reason why, that's when you'll be able to get the answers that you're looking for. That's when you'll know, okay, this is why this is a problem. Because for you might see that the CTA leads to a lot of drop-offs, but you don't have a clue as to why. You only know that the CTA, it should work well. But it's when you do that qualitative research that you're able to find out that, users who are colorblind do not see this CTA. And that's when you're able to actually change the color, as opposed to maybe removing it or replacing it, So I'm a huge advocate for using both qualitative and quantitative methods to find out the numbers, as well as the reasonings behind certain issues that you might have on your website.
To close up this section with like some super pragmatic action advice on what to do with each of those methods. Let's say you're a product owner, you're looking at the quantitative data that you have available to you, and you're just stumped. Like you're looking at it for weeks and you're like, why is this not working? Like, to stick with your example, there's a call to action and people just go away. Like bounce rate is high, you see that they go to another page and are not clicking on this button. What would be your like rule of thumb advice? Like what to do now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the quantitative data has helped you figure out what the problem is, or at least find or surface this problem. Using the demographics of this quantitative method. So let's say, for example, users between the ages of 60 and 65 during the times of 9 and 10, that's when there is significant drop-off. That is when you'd go and you'd find users who are between the ages of 60 and 65 and test them in these times that has been highlighted that has the most significant drop-offs. In that session, when you're asking them these questions, you might find out that they're elderly, that when they're using this website, it's nighttime, or they're on the move. So they don't have time to really pay attention, but they always come back. These are different nuances that will help you make an informed decision, as opposed to being stuck with this information or this problem and not knowing why. Also, another really great point when it comes to quantitative data is that it allows you to surface the problem to your stakeholders who are probably execs and don't have time and work with numbers. And when you highlight that, look, I have this problem and I want to follow up with qualitative research, they're able to understand why you followed up with the specific qualitative information to get this problem solved. So it's both a tool to gather more research as well as a tool to understand nuances behind this problem.
Nice. And would you suggest like a specific method from the list of qualitative ones that we have? You have this problem, you kind of know where it is and what it is. Let's go interview some people. Or like, what's the first step that you should look into? Or what's the most popular options
Yeah.
to start to get somewhere, I guess?
So it's case by case, depending on where you are in your product cycle, depending on how much time you have, depending on your resources, depending on who you are going to be presenting to. All these play a part when choosing your method. So using all that information, you're able to take a decision. Luckily, we have created a quiz that helps you take these decisions, that takes into account how much, what cycle you are in with your product design, who you are presenting to, how much time you have, what your main goal is. And this quiz allows you to at least guide you into what method you should be choosing.
Awesome. Perfect. We'll make sure to link that up in the show notes so you can just go and grab that. I'd be very interested to see what people do. But generally, I think for me, what really helped was to literally in any way, not freak out about the method so much at all, but to just remember when you can't know from your Google Analytics data, ask someone who's trying to use your website. And if you can't find anyone and you want to know it now, then just get someone who doesn't know anything about your problem really, even if they're on another department in your company. Just go to them, sit them in front of a computer and show them what you're trying to understand. There might be something. And of course, ideally, you get people from your customer group, exactly as you described, right? Get someone who matches the demographics and so on. There's platforms online to source people who can then be your test participant. And it's really not expensive either. And I think it's fair to say it will definitely be worth your money. So yeah, perfect. So that was a lot. There was a lot of stuff to take in, but also such a great overview. I learned a lot, even though we work at it every day. I think it's still very interesting to think about the fact that we're just making something for humans and that we're all not machines. And it's always just a little bit fuzzy. And so with that, it's really interesting to end this podcast with a little discussion on what does AI have to do with all of this? Right? I have the feeling there's so much discussion about the fact that we're human and the AI is not human. And I don't know, there was this other headline of this company called Character AI, who is, I think, they're even fighting in court. I might be super wrong, but there was a case where, I think Character AI was trying to get one of their, the characters to be legally represented as a person.
Wow.
And so, I don't know, I think the lines are blurring so much, right? Chatbots are everywhere. People are falling in love with them. Everybody seems to have a ChatGPT account. So, I don't know. In the light of UX research, what's your current take on all of this?
Yeah. So I think like many people, we don't know. We don't know what could happen. We're unsure of, will it replace certain practices? Will it replace certain jobs? And my stance is that I think that AI will in fact enhance any sort of research. It'll make research faster. It'll make it more accessible. It'll make it more scalable. However, there's no way that you can remove the human impact that comes with being a researcher or sorting through this information. So one of my arguments is that AI will transform research in the means of speeding it up with the help of documenting these findings, pulling out evidence, recognizing patterns, as well as, just the whole logistics of research, which is often quite time consuming. I could definitely see AI assisting in that often painfully long process.
One interesting thing that I heard about UX research and AI is, so I think there was someone talking about a company where you basically do usability testing with AI. So like you're not talking to a real person, but you're doing your interview thing with an AI. And I think the back thought is like an AI is trained on everything that humans know and so on. And then there was this gigantic discussion, of course, like immediate division into two camps, like the ones that are all for it and are like, well, this is probably good enough for what we're trying to understand. And the others were like, but you're not talking to a human. Like the AI is not going to use your product. Any thoughts on, because I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Wow. I think that's a lot, hey? So I think that I do agree that human beings are very complex and multifaceted and very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And I think with AI, it's informed by a specific action and is quite predictable and sometimes just makes up things.
Yeah.
So that just aren't true. And it's very problematic to take everything that comes from AI as the truth because these things are created with biases in mind and created by human beings who have specific biases, and that can become very dangerous very quickly. Yeah, so I don't think that's a great way to utilize it. I think it's always important to speak to human beings because human beings change, they evolve, and their thoughts aren't always going to be the same.
I also, I feel the premise is kind of wrong. I don't know, but at least a little skewed, so when you said, so AIs hallucinate and make up stuff, and people are also sometimes a little random. And it might seem that those two things are sort of related, but I think they're just very different from what it really stems from, right? So humans are like this amazingly multi-layered construct of emotions and logic and, all of these things that play together to see something like that today and to maybe feel different about it tomorrow, right? Hallucination of AI just comes from somewhere else, right? It's not the same origin of entropy, so to say.
Exactly.
And as such, I think it's super dangerous to, I can kind of understand that you're trying to use a shortcut, right? That you're trying to do this thing where I think that's also the appeal of all of this agentic thing, that you have an agent doing something for you. But especially in research, that you're trying to get 24/7 access to a person to do your research as quickly as possible. You don't have to schedule, you don't have to pay them or wait, or then they're sick or whatever. All of these inconveniences, you don't need them. But in this case, you don't want them to execute a task for you. You literally want their opinion.
Exactly.
You don't want to steer them anywhere. That's the backwards part for me about this whole discussion, where I think the principle of AI moving towards being our agents who can perform tasks is not what we want, at least not in the context of user research, right?
Yeah. Also, I think humans build things for other humans, and you need to have that input of humans at one point or the other. And I think it's really valuable to have that at user research, that you're able to know your clients. You're able to get that input straight from an actual human who you're building for. And unfortunately, AI just can't give you that nuanced, complicated, multifaceted opinion that you're looking for from human beings.
You also mentioned bias as a problem here. And so I think most of us might have heard that because of the training material that is used to train an AI model, that also AI has certain biases towards what they put in the generated output that they have. Also now in the context of AI versus humans as test participants in user research. So, your test participants probably also have a bias in some way or the other. Like, how would you compare these two things in this context?
That's such an interesting question. So I think with humans, you're able to sort of guesstimate some of the biases that they might have when they're answering your questions. So let's say, for example, you're testing a mother with kids, right? And you understand that she has biases because she currently has a child, and there's certain things that go into raising a child when she's answering specific questions, right? But with AI, you don't really have all that context. You don't have all that nuance that helps inform or decipher an answer that you're getting. You don't know what is the reasoning, or you might get what is the reasoning, but you don't have it in perspective. And it just lacks that nuance that you're able to get when it comes to a human being. Also, the way in which I found that AI delivers information, there's something about it that makes you think that it's fact, and you don't really question the information that you're getting. Whereas I feel like when you're speaking to a human being, you're studying this person, you're looking at their body language, you are seeing certain quirks that only a human can see when they're speaking to another human. And even if you are speaking quite factually, you're able to at least discern specific things. And with AI, you can't really get that. It's really tough for you to discern and try and understand and pick certain responses apart.
That's an excellent point. Really, like while you were just describing this difference, and thought, yeah, so it's a little bit like, I don't know, when my mom, back then, when we started to text on our phones or whatever, and she always said, like, what, you don't even see the person on the other side. How do you know how they feel about what you're saying? And I just thought chatting with an AI feels so real for people, because it's so fascinating that it's a computer on the other end, but it kind of responds to what you're asking, and it's very good at it, right? But it's missing so much of the rest of the human context. Like, there's no body to look at, there's no eyes, there's no facial expressions, there's no moods, no nothing. Like, all of that stuff is not there. And you're still trying to view everything, to take everything that you think usually of in human and to kind of project it onto this AI surface, which, it just misses a lot of stuff.
Exactly. Right? Also, every time that I've used AI, I've always been agreed with, and I've always gotten like a yes as an answer. That even when I ask for like a brutally honest response or any sort of like disagreement, there's just this agreeability that's innate that you don't really get when you're speaking to a human being.
I think it's made for guys.
Yeah.
It never talks back to you.
Never talks back, never says no.
It's never been complicated. Awesome. Well, maybe that's a great point to finish this podcast. Like, these were really excellent points. And I think literally on this level, like, an AI would have probably never gotten that stupid joke. So I'm sorry. Like, I'm trying to be offensive to anyone, but yeah, I mean, this agreeability is really a thing, right? Like, it always agrees with you. Like, even if you're really trying to be provocative. It's just like, yes, such a great point that you're making. Well,
I hate saying no.
Exactly. So, and I mean, to what you said coming into this segment, we use AI every day. right? Like we use it like Perplexity and Claude and ChatGPT. And like, I mean, our colleague Daniel is even making custom AI applications now and is trying to see what the recent developments bring, like stuff. I'm really excited about something that he's working on right now, where he's kind of indexing all of our knowledge into our private language model that we can then interact with Perplexity style and kind of go search engine on our own content. But that is not just somewhere on the internet, but on our own server. And I think all of these things, as you described, can be such an effective way to speed up mundane stuff, also about research, also about programming, about all of the stuff that we do. But it's important, I think, in my opinion, to come out the other end and always consider the human connection and just make sure that you stay on track with that, because otherwise you'll just lose focus of what you're aiming for, I guess. You know, at least it feels that way, that you kind of go off track and start to not talk to your customers anymore, but just talk about whatever.
Yeah.
Nosy, thank you so much for coming on. I always enjoy these discussions a lot. And yeah, hope to see you in another episode soon.
Amazing, Niels. Thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to be here.
Awesome. Right. Thanks everyone for listening, and see you on the next one. Bye.